everyone. Welcome back to Armed and Fabulous with Lauren Liberty, where we talk all things Second Amendment and the female perspective. Today, I'm super honored to have on our show Emma Wittmann. She's one of our attorneys here at the Attorneys for Freedom law firm. Welcome, Emma.
Hi, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
I'm so excited to have. I think this might be the longest conversation we've had since we work on opposite sides of the office. That
is very true.
Our conversations are usually a quick little chat, and then we get back to work. So why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself, kind of where you're from, and how you ended up at Attorneys for Freedom?
Sure, yeah. I grew up in Arizona, originally North Carolina, but I've lived here pretty much my whole life. Went to ASU for undergrad and same for law school, so definitely a Sun Devil. I started clerking here in my second year of law school with the Attorneys for Freedom. Always had a passion for criminal law, found it very interesting. Some of my favorite classes during law school, but I wouldn't say I necessarily knew out of the gate that that's what I wanted to do. It truly wasn't until I got to Attorneys for Freedom and started working in criminal defense that I really developed that passion and really saw myself working here. And of course, working with Mark and Andy, who are very passionate about what they do, not just, doing the best defense for their clients, but really wanting to change and mold the criminal justice system into something bigger and better than what it currently is. It stands for something, and it spoke to me, and I was adamant that when I came out of law school, this is where I was going to be an attorney, and I'm glad it worked out that way.
That's awesome. Do you feel that sort of sense of pride every day when you come into work?
Absolutely. I knew when I became an attorney, I wanted to be in a role that challenged me every day. Every day was different, exciting, and I would be constantly learning and growing, and that's exactly what it is. No case that we take on is the same. Every client is different. Every set of facts is different. And so every day that I walk in here, everyone's happy to be here because we're doing something that's meaningful. We enjoy what we do. And while it's, it can be high stress at times, given the stakes, we all take it very seriously and enjoy working together.
Yeah, I completely agree. This is probably the first office that I've worked at that I actually enjoy coming in, and I share an office with somebody that is we just have so much fun. People on the other side of them, they're like, we can hear you guys laughing all the way over there. So it's really awesome that Attorneys for Freedom strives to hire high character people. So it's awesome to be part of that team.
Absolutely.
So as far as the types of cases that you enjoy working on, do you have anything that you kind of prefer?
I would definitely say my practice has developed and changed over the years as I've been here. Right now, my caseload is almost entirely major felony cases. So it's definitely a variety of firearm, self-defense related cases to drug, sex crimes, a pretty vast spread of types of cases, but definitely loving working on major felony cases right now, representing those kinds of clients.
That's awesome. So I know a lot of the other attorneys here are pretty passionate about gun rights restorations, which I am also a huge fan of. I think that especially nonviolent people should have their rights restored. And I believe you worked on some of those cases here as well, right?
Yeah, I actually handled a lot of those right when I started here. That a lot of post-conviction relief, including set-asides or rights restorations for firearm rights specifically, was the bulk of my caseload when I first started out as an attorney. So spent a lot of time working with people, both that were looking to restore their rights after a firearm-related felony, or those that didn't have a firearm-related felony that regardless ends up losing those rights. So getting to work with them, a lot of people grew up and they went hunting, they enjoyed target shooting, they carried or wanted to protect their family. And because of potentially a single incident that made them a felon, they lost those rights. And so we saw a lot of people coming back to us saying many years down the road, well, now I have grandchildren and I just want to be able to take my grandson hunting and fishing again. And I can't do that right now. And I want to make sure if I get those rights restored so I can do those things legally and I can enjoy the rest of my years with my family. So helping people who want to be able to protect their family or even recreationally enjoy time with their family, it's really meaningful. Being able to petition the courts and explain to them why this person is deserving of having those rights back. And of course, when it comes full circle and the court grants it, just seeing the joy that they have to be able to go do those simple things and have those rights back. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's so important because it's almost manufacturing a crime, right? When you have this person that maybe did something 20, 30 years ago, and now if they wanted to go hunting or even just, have a firearm in their home for self-defense, now you're creating a prohibited possessor situation where they can catch a charge for that.
Exactly.
So I am just so much a fan of gun rights restoration and just civil rights in general. I think that it should be, as somebody has repaid their debt to society, they should regain those rights back.
Well, yeah, and you see it so often where it's someone who was in their early 20s who made a mistake, was living a very different life than, say, they're living in their 40s or 50s, and their whole perspective on life has changed. And they've used their time over the years to really change and better themselves. And so when you see someone who really is, completely transformed and deserving, being able to have the ability to help them get those rights back is great.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. So I know that you are a fan of shooting. We've kind of talked about going to the range. Can you tell me a little bit about how you kind of got into firearms?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say it was a huge part of growing up for me. When I was pretty young, my family had a cabin that was pretty remote. So when we were out there, the adults and I guess older kids would definitely target practice where we were able to, whether that was with a shotgun or just a BB gun. So I would say when I was pretty young, probably around 7 or 8, I learned the basics of firearm safety with a BB gun, nothing crazy.
Sure.
And so it really wasn't until adulthood that I started developing a passion for firearms. It started out as going target shooting with family and friends and really learning firearm safety and practicing. And the further into my 20s I got, the more I recognized the importance as a female of being able to protect myself. I'm pretty independent, so I didn't want to have to rely on somebody else if a situation were to arise. I wanted to know that I was prepared and confident in my ability to protect myself. And so for me, I knew if I was ever going to conceal carry, that it was something I wanted to continuously keep up with. And everyone's got different rules that they set for themselves on that. And so for me, I wanted to make sure I was continuously keeping up with my training, going to the range on a regular basis. That way, if, God forbid, I needed to use my firearm, I felt comfortable in doing that. And I knew I would be protecting not just myself, but the safety of anyone in the surrounding area.
Yeah, I think training is really a key component to just being a responsible firearm owner, right? And if you're going to be carrying, you need to train for those situations because you really just don't know what's going to happen. So I love just hearing that more and more women are training. I know Rachel and I talked about that as well. So it's really great to know that people are getting out there and maybe, I know a lot of people maybe feel a little uncomfortable even admitting that they might have gotten a little rusty if they're out of practice or whatever. So it's really encouraging to see that it's becoming a normalized thing.
Yeah, and it's funny, when I was thinking about it before coming on the show, I was thinking about the different areas in my life where people are firearms owners, and almost everyone in my immediate family is a firearm owner, whether their focus is because they enjoy the recreation of it or hunting or always to protect the home. And same goes for my immediate friend group. Every one of them is a firearm owner, including all of my female friends, which I'm proud to say that they all own firearms, and not just to protect their home, but protect themselves. And we'll go to the range together, which is great. And just the different dynamics of which my friends have firearms. There's people that within my group that enjoy hunting and the recreation. And there's also some of my friends that do competition shooting as well. So definitely a fun time when we're all actually able to get our schedules to match up and go to the range and practice together. And yeah.
That's awesome. I see a lot of women are really just accelerating in the competition shooting. I personally know quite a few women that do the 3-gun competitions and stuff like that. Is that something you think you'd ever be interested in?
I don't know. I definitely think I have a lot of room for improvement. It would definitely be fun if I had some free time to do it, and maybe one day. Who knows?
Yeah, I've considered it too, but I'm like, I don't know. The pressure is just kind of a different dynamic there.
Definitely.
But it's something I kind of feel like would be fun to even just do just for fun, not to actually compete, but just to try to do the same drills that they do.
Definitely.
It's pretty cool. So something that you mentioned is really important, that you have to be able to protect yourself. You have to be able to be your own first responder, because especially if you live in a remote area, you live in a high crime area, you can't anticipate that the police are going to be able to respond in a reasonable amount of time. So you need to be able to protect yourself. And if you have a family or anybody, or even if you see somebody else being attacked and you want to step in and help them out, it's really important to have that right. And there's certain cities, like something recently going on right now, the city of Chicago is suing Glock, which is kind of crazy because Glock is the most popular popular one of the most popular concealed carry pistols, and they are just flat out suing Glock. I know you know a little bit about this case, and we had kind of read the complaint, and it's setting a really scary precedent.
Absolutely. And they're essentially right now trying to prohibit Glock from selling to anyone within the city of Chicago. They are essentially alleging that the current models of Glock are too easy to be manipulated, so that they're finding a lot of firearms that are being used in crimes have what they're terming the Glock switch, which is a aftermarket part that's being produced by some, it sounds like, foreign and domestic companies, along with people who are making them off of a 3D printer, and they are attaching them to the Glock, and they're saying that it only takes a very short amount of time to add this piece to turn it into a fully automatic machine gun, quote unquote. And so they are going after Glock for this, saying Glock needs to remanufacture their product so it's not so easy for the city of Chicago criminals to change.
Something that I found really interesting in the actual complaint, I believe they did state that Glock is the most popular handgun for concealed carry. Mm-hmm. With that being said, why is this issue so specific to the city of Chicago? If everybody out there that owns a Glock can buy this auto sear Glock switch and convert their firearm, then why is it that we don't have this huge issue all around the country, right? It's like they're going after the firearm manufacturer and they're completely ignoring this whole other issue where their crime is out of control.
Yeah, they're essentially going after the wrong guy. Mm-hmm. You know, Glock is manufacturing a product that fits within the bounds of what it's supposed to be making. And because it's falling into the wrong hands, and the wrong hands are adding or manipulating the original product, somehow that's Glock's problem. And Glock should be anticipating that, I guess. Glock should be, every time they catch wind that someone's found a way to, crack the code of how to change the Glock, they've now got to have a fund ready to manufacture and redevelop a new model. I don't know why they aren't going after the companies or individuals who are producing the Glock switch. That mm-hmm. seems like it would make more sense to me, mm-hmm. Versus going after Glock that has nothing to do with this aftermarket piece.
Yeah, the way the complaint's written, I want to say you can't advertise to anybody in Chicago. You can't do online sales. They're like, oh, Glock's made it ridiculously easy to buy a gun online. It's like, well, that's the standard for purchasing a firearm online anywhere. Yeah. They're not doing anything. They're not specifically advertising to the city of Chicago. It's kind of bizarre. Like, I was reading that and I kind of was just facepalming the whole time.
And, one thing, I went through this complaint a couple times, and one thing that they just totally leave out is, are the people that are purchasing the firearms that they're manipulating direct purchases from Glock? Are these aftermarket purchases? They don't mention that at all. And they're seizing these Glocks that have this aftermarket piece on it from crime scenes, from murders, from drive-by shootings, generally speaking, from a criminal defense perspective. That usually isn't somebody's first crime. So are these people that are doing these, major crimes that are actually bullet pointed out in this complaint, are these really their first offenses, or are they already prohibited possessors that shouldn't be possessing any type of firearm, let alone a Glock specifically, to begin with?
The train of thought that I was thinking, like, how many of these were stolen? How many of these were actually legally possessed, mm-hmm. right? Because the criminal's not going to follow the law no matter what the law says. And all they're doing is putting law-abiding citizens at a disadvantage for trying to purchase a Glock. The reason that Glocks are so popular is because they're super dependable. I'm a little bit of a Glock fanboy. I do personally carry one. But they're super dependable. They are consistent. Like, there's a reason that they're so popular, and there's a reason why that design works so well. And to force them to change that would also affect users of the firearm. I know that I would feel a little bit iffy if the next generation of Glocks, and I know, actually, I think the 5th generation, they did make a small change to it. They mentioned it in the complaint. So they actually did do something to try to remedy this. But how much can they change without completely changing the Glock for what it is, being a dependable and just workhorse of a firearm?
Yeah, and I think it becomes a slippery slope, too. So let's say that this case is successful on the side of the city of Chicago. What happens to the current Glock owners that have these older generations? Are they going to now try to say, all right, anyone in the city that owns, these models or generations of Glock, well, those are illegal within our city now, so turn them in, get rid of them. What happens then? And so we have to be careful about that, because the people that are essentially leading to this suit, those that have used it, modified it, who probably were prohibited possessors to begin with, are going to risk the rights of people who are legal, responsible firearm owners. And anytime that you see a city or a state or government in general trying to infringe on firearm rights or put in new, controls, you worry about those that are doing everything they're supposed to be doing and, using it to protect themselves from situations that are listed out in the complaint.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that the slippery slope thing, the precedence has already been set by the ATF and the DOJ, right? They are manufacturing crimes. They're turning people into criminals with things like the Watts and the FRTs and the pistol brace bans and the bump stock bans. These are people that are law-abiding citizens. They legally purchased these aftermarket parts and put them on their firearms, and now all of a sudden they've circumvented Congress and they've declared these things to be machine guns. And I can go off on a tangent on that, but I feel like the city of Chicago is kind of taking a page from their book if they do end up kind of making this retroactive, and anybody that does have an older generation Glock will have to surrender it, or basically you're now a criminal as well. And it puts people at such a disadvantage, especially in a city like that where it's already so difficult to get a concealed carry permit, right? They already make you jump through so many hoops to be able to even protect yourself from an area that's known to have high crime, right? It's not like it's even unreasonable to want to be able to protect yourself in that city. It's well known, it's well documented. There are mass shootings there pretty much daily. So it just makes you wonder, what's the motive here? Why would you want to disarm peaceful people, law-abiding people from protecting themselves against the known criminals that are in your city?
And I mean, to be honest, it's only a matter of time, even if this were to go through, that if someone wants to obtain a Glock, they can buy it from outside the city of Chicago and bring it in, which could very well be what's happening to begin with. If somebody wants to modify it to make it a fully automatic or, machine gun, they're going to figure a way to do it if that's what they're set on doing. Will it take them more time to do it maybe than what it is right now? Possibly. But is it going to completely stop the problem? No. Is it going to stop the crime in the city of Chicago? Probably not.
No, if anything, I predict it's just going to make it worse, because you're going to put people at such a disadvantage. And it's setting a really scary precedent for this type of thing. Like, if they are successful in this lawsuit, it's setting a really bad precedence for other cities and other states to do the same, right? Think about how many manufacturers there are out there, and who's to say that they wouldn't then go after ammunition manufacturers? I mean, it can just cascade into a whole plethora of lawsuits and decisions that really do affect tons of people, especially as a country that has like the most firearms in the world. I think we have more firearms than we do people in this country. And so that's a huge thing. That's a big deal. And when you think about how many firearms there are out there, and if this is such an issue, again, I just don't see that this is only an issue in Chicago. No, I think it's a Chicago issue. It's not a firearm issue.
I agree.
Again, you have to really wonder, what is the end game here? I was reading part of the complaint at the end, kind of what the city was asking for, and one thing that they wanted was a fine for every day that Glock is in violation of whatever the ruling is. So is this really about protecting people, or is there an ulterior motive there?
Well, and it's funny. One of the things that they're requesting is, I believe they called it a municipal cost recovery fund, which essentially spelled out that any crime that the city of Chicago had to investigate that involved a Glock with this Glock switch or modified piece, they want those costs covered. They want Glock to pay for the full police investigation, and, just knowing the rampant amount of crime within the city, and if they're reaching the point where this is a civil suit, how much money do we think that's actually going to be that the city is asking Glock to pay?
Right. So if it's as bad as they're saying with these modified Glocks, then you got to imagine whatever, and who's determining the cost for that, right? I'm sure they determine that, and they're setting their costs, and then they're going to demand restitution from the manufacturer. That's crazy. And why is it only Glock, right? Like, I mean, if that's the case, there's tons of other firearms, I'm sure, that are being used in their city. Why are they only going after them? It seems to just be that they found this one little niche thing that it can be modified. But really, I mean, pretty much any firearm can be modified. They're just going after Glock. I wonder if they know that because it is so popular, they probably have a lot of money to pay out, right?
Probably. And again, it circles back to, why are they not talking about the manufacturers of the secondary product? Why are we not trying to figure out where these pieces are coming from? Why are we not going after the people making them? And they make reference to some people being able to make them with a 3D printer, but it sounds like a lot of them are coming from either overseas or somewhere domestic. Why are they not trying to track down who is manufacturing this piece that goes onto the Glock? Why Glock?
There's no mention of it at all in the complaint. No, it's just so focused on the company. Another part of the complaint that I found really funny was that they said it, with the auto sear, they stated that the Glocks can fire 1,200 rounds in 60 seconds. Mm-hmm. And I did some Googling to try to verify that, and I can't find that anywhere.
Interesting.
Yeah, I can't. And I've actually fired like a fully auto Glock, and I think it was like 15 rounds or something like that. And yeah, it went quickly, but I couldn't see 1,200 rounds in 60 seconds going. I found that. I'm like, are they just making up statistics here? The only place that I was able to actually find that number was other like gun grabby type of websites. I couldn't find anything actually verifying that that's how fast. I mean, I have to imagine that would get super hot, right? How could you even hold on to something that's firing that many rounds that rapidly? So I don't know. I just kind of, reading this whole complaint, I just kind of read it with a huge grain of salt. And there were some things that, as a firearm owner and somebody that's pretty familiar, I just was laughing the whole way, because I'm like, this, having spoken with legislators and like gone to Congress and talked to people, they're writing these laws and these complaints, and they actually have no idea what they're talking about because they're so removed from the actual firearms themselves. They don't understand that that claim of, shooting that many rounds is, you can't actually verify it, and you can't say yourself that you've done it because you've probably never even shot a gun.
Sure.
It's scary when these are the people that are trying to control something that they completely just misunderstand and don't even take the time to research and try to understand it. They just have their narrative. They find whatever facts they need to support that, completely biased, and then they just send it.
I think it's going to be an interesting one to follow for sure. I can't wait to see what Glock's response is back to this. I think it's definitely something we're going to have to follow. I imagine Glock is going to have a lot to say. Should be an interesting one to see how this plays out.
Yeah. I'm hoping it's just dismissed, but you never know. But maybe we could do another episode and follow up on that.
Yeah,
I think that'd be awesome. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. It was really wonderful to have you on this show, and I hope to have you back soon.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thanks so much for joining me on this episode of Armed and Fabulous with Lauren Liberty. Make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications. For more legal advice, check out attorneysforfreedom.com. And for more information on our self-defense program, be sure to go to attorneysonretainer.us. If there's any topics that you'd like us to cover, leave us a comment below. Till next time, stay armed and stay fabulous.